What is going on, baseball fans? Welcome to another episode of Baseball as Intended, the podcast. This is your host, Yeyo. Episode 22 is here, and we got my good friend Jon here. We're going to be going around the league, as we usually do, go over the standings, go over some changes. There's a lot of excitement around the league. We're going to be talking about the All-Star voting. Final stage is coming up later this week, so we're going to be going over the starters, or a couple thoughts on that, and also, obviously, the Home Run Derby. We're going to talk about that as well. And our very interesting star bench cut. We're going to be talking about some of the biggest disappointments this year. And Jon is very disappointed in his team, as usual. But Jon, aside from that, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I don't know why you keep taking shots at me every intro.
I
I'm
don't know
doing
either.
fantastic. You can't bring me down. Yeah, when having a good weekend, went to the driving range as I told you. I invited you. You didn't want to go. Getting my golf swing down, and yeah, super excited for the All-Star game. I actually love it. Like, I think the MLB All-Star weekend festivities, the whole thing. We were talking earlier. I even like the celebrity softball game.
Yeah.
Like, it's all good to me.
And
It's
in
all good.
Seattle, it's going to be electric too. Like, it's going to be a fun time in
Yeah.
Seattle, just because I feel like every sporting event in Seattle is kind of like exciting, except that
The
18 inning.
Seahawks started it, right? The Seahawks started all
Yeah.
that. Like, they made Seattle a sports town.
Wow.
I'm sure there's some Seattle Supersonic fans that are going to
Okay,
come.
wow. I take
Whatever.
shots at you during the intro, but you take shots at the entire Seattle.
At everybody else. At everybody else. The whole Pacific Northwest.
Well, we'll talk about the All Star a little bit later, but let's go around the league. Let's go ahead and get started. Obviously, before we get started, make sure to like, follow, subscribe, rate it, share it, comment, all that good stuff. Around the league, not much change, honestly. When we look at standings wise, the AL East, we still got Tampa, 54 and 27. They're still 4.5 games ahead of the Baltimore Orioles. Yankees, Toronto, Boston wraps that up. Obviously, last week we're talking right before the Boston Red Sox played the Yankees. Red Sox swept the Yankees. Aaron Judge is still out, and I think that's the biggest news of at least this division. And I mentioned it last time where they still didn't know, and they were expecting. Some people were saying how, hey, Judge is going to be out until after the All-Star break. And
Yep.
if Judge is out until after the All-Star break, that's another 2 weeks of something that was supposed to be minor. And he'll miss 20, 30 games. That's your big free agent-ish guy. You brought him back, you paid him big bucks. But the Yankees won't go far without Judge. But what do you got? They're still the best division in baseball, right? Boston, last place team with a 40 and 39 record. But aside from that, what do you got from the East?
No, I think the Yankees are in a really tough spot because I said this either last episode or a couple episodes ago. I don't mind that they put all their eggs in Aaron Judge's basket because when he's on the field, he makes them a really good team. I know they've won, I think, the last 2 games. I don't know how they stay afloat without him. Like a 3-week, month-long stretch without Aaron Judge could be the end of the Yankee season. Truthfully, they'll still be in contention at some point with the wild card and all that, but it can literally cost them. They do not look good when he's out. I think they're one of the teams of all the teams that are in contention. We've seen a lot. The Marlins without Sandy, all these teams that can still manage to hang around. I don't know that the Yankees can do that without Judge. So they need to hope, pray, witchcraft, whatever you need to do to get Aaron Judge back because they are in trouble. And this, like, I'm not even bashing them. He is their team.
I mean, he's the reigning AL MVP for a reason. Historic year. He was on pace for another historic year, and they kind of slowed down, obviously, after he left. If he's going to miss another, I don't know, month or so, they're probably done. Right now, they are in the wild card race. They are in the wild card, but you got to expect that at some point, if Judge doesn't come back, then you're really going to be in trouble. But props to them because they're hanging around still, even without Judge. Nobody in that division really, there wasn't any changes. Really not much there. Is still the same standings. Tampa is still running with it. But Baltimore, again, 47-29 still.
Baltimore is bringing up another top prospect
Yeah.
who was just mashing in the mind. I mean,
They're full of them. They're full of them.
They're so confident now. They're like, whoever we bring up is going to perform. And it's happening. So
yeah, and it's gonna be meaningful games too, right? So
Yes.
yeah, that's gonna be fun. I still think Baltimore and I at the beginning of the year I thought it was gonna be Toronto, the Toronto Tampa Yankees. Baltimore sneaked in there, but it was. I think they're still like they're kind of like a year or two ahead of what their own plan was, right? Because they didn't want
Yeah.
to sign big free agents or anything, just waiting for their young core or these young prospects to develop, and they're here and they're here to stay. Like
Yeah.
that Adley Rushman impact is for real,
One of the biggest impacts, right?
crazy. It's
Because he
crazy.
came up to a team that had no chance. They were not in the race last year, nothing like that, and changed the culture. Am I giving like I don't want to give him too
No,
much credit. He changed the culture.
catchers have that much of impact, and we'll get to that. But the Cardinals, this is the first year without Yadi Molina, and you see where they at. Catcher might be the most underrated position in sports. I'm just saying, and
I
that's
like
two
that.
prime examples. I know you like that. Thank you.
I like that.
Uh,
Yeah.
AL
That's a good
Central.
hot take right there.
I mean, I'm just saying, it's not a coincidence. It cannot be a coincidence, right? He was there for 20 years, and they never struggled this bad. Now he's out, they're struggling. Somebody else that is struggling is the entire AL Central. Again, honestly,
Yes.
Cleveland is coming back ish now. They're 2 games back of Minnesota. Minnesota is still in first place. There's just this division is just so boring. We're just gonna get a lot of, it's gonna get exciting. The most exciting times of this division, in my opinion, is gonna be the trade deadline. There's gonna be so many players leaving that division. You got Kansas City, right? I don't know if they're gonna trade Salvi. That's kind of like their George Brett ish of that.
Wouldn't surprise you
But
though, right?
no,
I mean, especially if he gives them kind of their blessing in
yeah,
a way, like, hey, I had a good run.
send me
Let me
to a
go
winning team.
somewhere and compete. Yeah, like no hard feelings. That could be definitely something that
Yep.
happens.
Chapman is there as a lefty arm. You just don't want to send him to New York, but everywhere else, he's going to throw 104. He's going to be fine. Detroit has some nice pieces there. So, yeah, I think that's going to be the most exciting part of the AL Central is going to be the trade deadline. But as of right now, it's
Well,
just
and then
kind
the
of
very end as well, right? At some point, because they will be
a division
the
winner.
way it's going right now. It looks like there's going to be, yeah, I mean, someone has to win the division, and it looks like it's going to come down to the last week because those standings have not shifted. I mean, it's the
Yeah.
Twins barely hanging on, and the Indians just
And I still
somehow staying in second place.
kind of think Cleveland is gonna come back and win it, right? Like for some reason, but then again, I'm thinking about Minnesota there, and Pablo Lopez has been decent for them. He struggled his last outing, but they had Luis Arias there, and I don't know how much that would have been. Like Luis Arias still in Minnesota. Does that mean they were instead of a 40 and 39 that maybe they would have been 45? I don't know. I don't think that much of an impact,
Hey,
but you know,
I was surprised. We talked about
Yeah.
this. I was surprised that no one else was surprised that they traded away a young batting champion. I understand what they got back, but no one blinked. Everyone was like, "No, even trade, great for both sides."
which it
Maybe
was.
probably a little better for the Marlins right now.
It
It
is,
feels
yeah.
like. You know, I think you have to think about that. You know, batting champions still matter for something. You know.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where we knew that Minnesota needed a pitcher, so they got their pitcher. They were okay without the hitter. Arraez maybe wasn't going to be hitting 400 in Minnesota. He played there for a couple of
Yeah.
years. He won a batting title with a 311 batting average. But, you know, he's just hitting 400, so now he's like, ooh, that's a big loss. But, you know, Pablo hasn't been terrible-ish, right? It's just
Yeah.
4 ERA.
No,
He's
it
been what
wasn't
he
a
is.
bad
He is what he
trade
is.
on
but,
either
yeah.
side, but he's hitting 400.
Yeah, that's a big.
We're getting to the All Star.
Oh, now the Marlins won that trade with no matter what happens the rest of the year. But
I'm
yeah,
just saying impressive now because I think the most impressive thing is we had talked about him a couple episodes ago. Can he hit 400? Can he not? He went like 0 for 16.
Yeah.
He was down right in where you predicted, like 370, which could very well be. And I was kind of like, all right, well, there's the decline. And then he just crawled right back up to 400, 5-hit games.
another one.
Yeah, nuts.
I think
nuts.
he's 1 5-hit performance away from tying the MLB record, and obviously 2 to break it. We're halfway there. Like we're literally, as you can see by the title here on the YouTube, like and subscribe. We're halfway there. We're almost at the 80 game mark. So, you know, it's gonna be interesting. But you know, props to Minnesota still for being in first place, even without their batting champ, and without Correa. We'll talk about him later. Anyway,
we will discuss.
AL West, Houston and Angels kind of flip flop. Houston owns the tiebreaker there right now, I guess. everyone seemed to kind of had a rough week in this division, but nobody really took advantage of the other teams having a rough week. You still have Texas with the 6-game lead ahead of Astros and Angels, and then Seattle 37 and 39. It's still kind of like they kind of want to get going, but they just don't. So, and Oakland.
Well, Oakland 1-9 in their last 10. I think it's dangerous what these teams, particularly the Astros, are doing with the Rangers. When the Rangers finally show a little crack in their armor and start to scuffle a little bit, you better take advantage because they look legitimately good. I mean, we know DeGrom is out now for good, but he's been gone the whole year. You can't even factor that into saying, hey, they're not going to be good the second half of the year. It's the same analogy I use kind of with the Braves. I mean, I don't want to put the Rangers in that conversation, but the Rangers haven't given you an inch all year. And they did kind of in the last 10 games, and no one did anything about it. And so you keep playing with fire. You keep thinking, oh, it's just the Rangers. It's just the Rangers. The Rangers are going to end up winning the division by 6 games if this keeps up.
I mean,
and the Astros, I think of them kind of like Cleveland. Like you keep saying, and I'm not saying just you, but you kind of feel like Cleveland will come back and win that division. You kind of feel like the Astros are going to come back and make a run at this division, but they haven't shown anything to really make me believe that other than past years, And you can put some stock into that, but I don't know. It's a little uncomfortable for them.
To your point, Houston is 3-7 in the last 10 games, and maybe they're just not it right now, right? Maybe this is what the Astros are. The Angels are hanging around. That's gonna be the story of the year, if you ask me. What's gonna happen with Shohei and whatnot? But I mean, Texas right now, their offense is just stacked. Probably the best lineup in baseball right now, from top to bottom. So. Well, second best behind Atlanta, maybe, because Atlanta is 9-1 in their last 10 NLEs. They're still leading the division by 6. The Marlins are trying to keep pace. They're 7-3 in their last 10, so that means they lost 2 games. Like, think about that.
Frustrating, so frustrating.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, there's what can you do at this point? They're kind of going for the wild card. For Atlanta, first game to 50 wins in the National League. You still got the Phillies. They're 10 games back at the division, 7-3 in the last 10, so they're still remaining hot. The same cannot be said for your New York Mets. They somehow keep finding ways of. They're 15 games back of the division.
Some would say we're in a fight for last place.
Not quite, but you're closer to last place than to first place. We'll say that.
Same distance from last to third place.
Yikes. Well. So
unbiased, John. Very unbiased there.
A little too unbiased. You might be a little too hurt, but I mean, yeah. We talked about this division, thinking that it would be one of those that was going to be so close till the end, right? Maybe 3 teams battling for it. Right now, it's still Atlanta. Even with Miami being that wild card out of nowhere, we were expecting maybe the Phillies and Mets to be there, but I mean, Miami still winning. We talked about Sandy not being Sandy, not Cy Young Sandy, but they brought up Sandy Part 2, 20-year-old Eury Perez, and now he's like, he's insane. It's a 20-year-old.
Yes, he is. He's stepped up in a big spot that they need him to kind of fill those shoes. Sandy, I'm guilty of this now. I keep thinking he's going to turn it around. I do. I don't know. I'm delusional about him. I've seen him be so good. He has all the tools. Is it like, does he come back after the break? At this point, I'm thinking some of these players that have been bad need the All-Star break. They do. There's no science behind that, but they need the All-Star break, and then they come back. You think Sandy turns it on? And also, is this division over? Yeah.
So, first question. I don't know what. So the thing with Sandy is that his strikeouts are down. His walk is up. His walk rate is up. That's never a good combination. ERA over 5. Someone said to me something that I was like, maybe, and I haven't watched every start of him. I don't, but they said, well, maybe the shift was something that benefited him a lot, right? Like, striking out 7 per 9 is not very good. So he's pitching to contact, even though he's throwing 100, he's still pitching to contact. But you don't have the shift as before, so maybe that's kind of like a disadvantage for him. I don't know. Is the division over? I don't want to say it is, but I just can't. I just don't see. I've told you this before. Atlanta will struggle, and their struggle is gonna be 4-6 in their last 10 games. Like they're just
And
not
that's the
gonna have.
worst.
That's the worst they
Yeah.
could do. They're so good, so deep, so. I mean, only thing that can happen is a major injuries. But like obviously you have to be healthy, and they
And
are.
it would have to be more than one
And
guy.
it has to be
That's
more
the
than
crazy
one guy.
thing.
Like
Yeah.
if you take Acuna out, you still have Ozzy Albies and Matt Olson leading the division, leading the world in home runs, and then you got Osuna that
Austin
will
Riley.
Eddie Rosario figure out how to hit again. So you got a shortstop that is going to be the starter for the NL. We'll talk about that later. You
Yep.
know, they just have way too many pieces that I don't know. They're just unreal right now. They're just
Sounds
unreal.
like you're saying it's over. I think it's over. I do.
It's very close to over.
I do.
Very close.
I do. I think there's still a lot to watch there because the Marlins are still very good. If they can make it into a wild card, it's a big
Yeah.
story. But for the division, I think it's over.
Yeah, it's tough to see them choke the division.
Yeah,
Like,
that's the one that
yeah.
I really look at, and I'm like, I don't see anyone really. Teams can make a run, they just won't catch up.
One division that it's up for grabs, and it's been up for grabs since day one, is the NL Central. At the beginning of the year, we thought the Cardinals would be the winners. They're in last place. At the beginning of the year, the first few weeks, we were like, hey, here are the Cubs. They went backwards. They were fourth place the last few weeks. Now they're in third place. They got a little hot, 8-2 in the last 10. Then at some point, the Pirates were there. Ooh, the Pirates. No, then Milwaukee. But now we got the team that we always forgot about, and it's the most fun team to watch right now in baseball, the Cincinnati Reds. And ever since they brought up Eli De La Cruz, has been like a spark to that team. And that's what I love. I don't know enough about prospects, but every time I see these big names getting called up, I'm get excited because I know these things can happen. Like we've seen it before, right? He hit for the cycle. They went at it with Atlanta. Atlanta went to Cincinnati, packed out, playoff atmosphere in Cincinnati.
It was like a heavyweight fight.
And they went at it. And they went at it with the best team in baseball or best team in the NL. So anybody can win this division. I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm done trying to figure out what's going to happen in the division. I'm just going to sit back, watch, enjoy it, and just watch whoever wins the division get eliminated in the first round of the playoffs.
Oh, you had me up until that point. I was gonna say that if you're a Cincinnati fan, that series against the Braves felt good because they didn't back down at all. They didn't give an inch,
Even
and
losing.
that made you think. Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, I don't want to say much about moral victories because I don't know how much a moral victory really helps you. But if the Reds sneak in and they go up against the Braves in the playoffs, they got to feel decent.
Yeah.
They're going to have that memory. They played really, really well. That division is up for grabs. The team that really struggled and shot themselves in the foot, the Pirates have been hanging around all year, and they went 1-9 in their last 10, which, a lot of surprises have happened in that division. They're now, let me take a look and see here.
And while you
they're
look,
5.5 back in the division.
1-9
It feels
in
like
the last
a lot
10.
right there, but
that's
1-9. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean they and at the same time the Reds went 8-2. So just a disastrous stretch for them for a team that was really kind of hanging around again, doing more than they should have. We'll see how they respond. That'll be interesting as well.
So one thing, obviously not only the Reds were 8-2 in the last 10, the Cubs were also 8-2. That's why they're in third place.
Yep.
The Pittsburgh Pirates are in fourth. They also called up their young prospect, Henry Davis, that he was supposed to be the guy. It's not working out the same as Eli De La Cruz. That is not that same impact, right? Obviously, plenty of baseball left. It's still 5.5 games between the first or the top four teams in that division. So anything can happen. I'm about to count out the Cardinals. I don't know. I think they're done.
Do it.
But
let's do it. They're out.
Okay,
They're out.
Sorry, Cardinals fans. NL West, we got Arizona, Dodgers back in second place. They're tied with San Francisco, and then San Diego, Colorado. So Colorado won the series this weekend, but they got outscored by 20 runs or something like that. So interesting way of competing there in Colorado. But Arizona is still hot. San Francisco still hot. Dodgers are still finding ways to winning games as well. So that's going to be that 3-team race for that division is going to be fun. San Diego is, 9.5 games back of the division. They have a roster to get hot very fast, but they're 7 games out of the wild card, and that's a big mountain to climb.
Yeah, this is kind of the opposite of the Central. The Central's a little bit exciting because everyone's around 500, and so the top three teams are all close. They have a chance. The West is really close, but they're all playing well. Like you can't even look at the Dodgers. I think we're still surprised to see the Dodgers in second place, but you can't. It's kind of like a situation in the American League East. I mean, the division isn't that good, but these teams are playing well. San Francisco is still hot. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They're in third place.
Can
Two and a
can they
half,
keep
3
it up?
games back.
Can they keep it up?
I don't know. I don't know about any of this anymore. I think Arizona does win that division. I think Arizona is really good. Corbin Carroll is just, we had him in our start bench cut as an MVP candidate. I think well deserved. And that's what you need as a team to overperform a little bit, is a young guy to come up and be an MVP candidate. You don't get that often. They're getting it, and that's why they're in first place. I don't see him really regressing. He doesn't have a game that, he's not reliant on one thing. And I think Arizona probably holds off the Dodgers, but it won't be easy. That one will not be easy. And the Giants, will see what they do.
You gotta.
The Giants, I'm just watching, and there's no predicting.
Yeah. Watch them make a trade in the deadline and just make that team so much better, and then we're gonna be like, oh, here they come. But
they have the money, right? They
Yeah.
have the money. They can eat a contract. They can do a lot of different things. Let me ask you, Yeyo. So we just went through everything. Halfway there, right? Like we said, by the time our next episode, we'll technically be over the halfway point. Give me some of your maybe 3-4 actual big disappointments this year, team-wise.
Big disappointment. I got to start with the Cardinals. I just mentioned them. I thought they were going to win that division, and I didn't think it was going to be that close. And looking at the record, the division leader and, the Cincinnati Reds are leading the division with a 41-37 record. I figured the Cardinals were going to be much better than that.
Yep.
So that's my biggest disappointment. I'll probably go San Diego next, 37-41. So they're, 4 games below 500 on a team that went out and spent a lot of money. And when you have guys or teams like San Francisco and Arizona ahead of you, like the Dodgers are supposed to be ahead of you because they spend just as much, right? But maybe Arizona and San Francisco not. So Manny Machado played his cards well to make money, but he really didn't do anything with it, or he's not doing much with it. And another disappointment's got to be the Mets, another team that spent a lot of money. I'm sorry, I'm going all NL, but it's just fourth place in that division that obviously, 50-27 by the Braves is very hard to do, but you got to go for at least that wild card. And the fact that they're not even in the wild card race right now, I think it hurts. They're the highest payroll team, right? If I'm not mistaken, in the big league. So that has to hurt.
You are not mistaken.
So those are my 3 biggest disappointment.
So I agree with all those. I think to touch on some of the ones that you said, so there were some big money teams, the Padres and the Mets. When you spend the money and you have the talent and then you don't win, there's nothing really to blame. It's hard to blame. That's what makes it like truly a disappointment, because you just sit there and you go, why? If you're a Padres fan, if you're a Mets fan, you're not really sitting there in the offseason and saying, what could we have done better as far as players and bringing people in? You had everyone you need. Everyone's just playing poorly. Cardinals, because of the weak division and just what they've done, you thought, just play 500 baseball, you'll be right there. They can't even do that. The American League, I think, has a lot less disappointments. Yeah. The American League East, you can look at the standings and say whatever you want. Everyone is in the playoff hunt. Yeah. So I can't say that's really a big disappointment. The only one that I would say stands out to me a little bit is the Mariners. And not that their expectations were all that high. I think we actually said that they would take a little bit of a step back this year, but it's been even more. And it starts with Julio Rodriguez, who's taken a step back. Maybe he finds that, all-star game energy in his hometown that's worked for people. It's worked for Juan Soto before. We'll see what happens with that. But I think they've had a little bit of a disappointing season, but it's mainly the National League has had the most disappointments.
I agree. And it's something like when you talk about the AL, it's like, well, if you would have told me at the beginning of the year Toronto is going to be in 4th place, well, that's a little bit of a disappointment. But they're 43-36, so right. That's not the disappointment. Cleveland, I feel like not being in 1st place, 3 games below 500 is also a disappointment, because I felt like they were the better team. They showed what they could do in the playoff. They went at it with the Yankees in the last postseason. So them being there 3 games below 500, but for sure. I do think the biggest disappointments are in them.
That's the thing though about a team like Cleveland and some of those other teams is they can erase all that with a good second half
Yeah,
because they're not far from being in the playoffs. No one cares if you make it into the playoffs and go on a run, but there's a couple teams that look out of it right now that we did not expect.
I agree. I agree.
Thanks.
Good question. Moving over to the All-Star voting. We're on phase two. There's one last phase. MLB All-Star starters will be announced this Thursday, the 29th on ESPN. Make sure you tune in. But there's a lot of close voting. There's a lot of, we'll go over the list of the top, the starters as of right now. Leading vote getters are for the AL, Shohei Ohtani; for the NL, Ronald Acuna Jr. I don't think there's any surprises there. Probably
No.
MVP front runners for both. But let's go ahead and check out some of the positions. We'll go position by position, but we'll go quick. Catchers for the NL. We do have Sean Murphy leading the votes, and Will Smith. Sean Murphy, somebody from Oakland that they brought in. So Sean Murphy, and then as a backup is going to be Will Smith from the Dodgers. I see Francisco Alvarez is there fourth. He
For no good reason.
For no
good reason.
Okay. Wilson Contreras is there seventh. So yeah, you feel free to chime in on any thoughts on this.
So I think we're gonna see a trend here. We see Braves and Dodgers. You go to first baseman, you'll see Braves. I think we're gonna see a lot of those teams, especially the Braves. Like this All-Star voting, as we go through it, I think most of the guys are teams in the hunt. Like
yeah.
Sometimes you get random people that are just doing really well on bad teams. We don't see a lot of that this year.
It's when your team is doing well. When the team is winning, is because the players are doing well. So if the players are doing well, they're going to be on the All-Star ballot like this. Like you mentioned, first baseman, Freddie Freeman, Matt Olson, Pete Alonso is there at third right now. I think the fact that he got hurt didn't help him. But Freddie Freeman deservedly so, should be the first one there. Matt Olson leading the league in home runs, again, because Pete Alonso got hurt. For second
and Freddie
base.
Freeman's replacement, which is,
and Freddie Freeman replacement. They're going to be linked forever.
Yes, and even the Braves, Sean Murphy, what a pickup for them, right?
They don't
All-star
miss.
catcher, they don't miss.
They don't miss.
It's infuriating.
Second baseman, they got Luis Arraez as the leading vote getter there for the NL. Ozzy Albies, who's having an amazing year. Sneaky pop all of a sudden, both sides of the plate there. He's second. Nobody really that jumps out. I think that's for sure the top, the two second basemen for the NL. Third baseman, we're going to Arenado and Austin Riley. You got Max Muncy there, who's having a good year. Manny Machado is at fifth. That's a weird one because I feel like those were more by names. It feels like I don't know.
Arenado's having an average year.
Yeah.
I just don't think Cardinals fans are great fans. They don't have anyone else to vote for.
Who else? Exactly. Who else? Because Manny Machado is another name, but he's not. He's having a terrible year. Max Muncy's having a good year, but then he doesn't have the name that the others do. Shortstop, like I mentioned earlier, Orlando Arcia out of nowhere because he wasn't even supposed to be the starter for the Braves. Lindor is their second. Sander Bogarts is their third. A little bit of disappointment shortstops there. Same with Trey Turner, who's fifth. Little disappointment.
Yeah.
That's just a little hint there for the start bench cut. We're going to be talking a little bit about some of those shortstops in a second. Designated hitters. We got JD Martinez, who's having this one hurts me. He's on pace for like 40 home runs. Bryce Harper is there as well. Soler is fourth and he has like 20 plus home runs as well. So, yeah. And then outfielders, we got Acuna obviously as the leading vote getter. Mookie, Corbin Carroll, that would be the starters in the outfield, and that's a pretty solid outfield.
Stacked, yes.
And then you got Lourdes Gurriel, Juan Soto, Fernando Tatis. I think Tatis, if it would have been starter or would have been playing since the beginning of the year, he would probably be there in the top three as well. But
it'd be tough though, because Corbin Carroll's having a year. That you start looking at.
But Juan Soto is too.
So many.
Yeah, Juan Soto is too. And the thing is that defensively, he's well above average too. Acuna is not, but Acuna makes up for it offensively. But then Tatis is having a very good offensive year as well. But what else jumps out at you from this NL list?
I think this is the shortstop is all out of whack, but everything else looks pretty good to me, to be honest. I get disappointed by all-star votes all the time, especially with the fan vote. I think as you start getting down on the list, you see some weird names. Like, again, Trey Turner is fifth, and that's wild. Three of the biggest disappointments are getting in there just based on names. But as far as the rest of it, I think they got it right. I mean, Arcia is kind of a name that you didn't expect there. He got all the votes. Luis Ariz is obviously having a killer year, but he got the recognition that he needed, being the leading second baseman. JD Martinez, a surprise. A lot of these names, usually they don't get it right, and I think it's actually pretty accurate. Do you?
Yeah, I think one that surprised me a little bit is because everybody has him as the best catcher. Still is JT Realmuto. He's in third there, but Sean Murphy having a good year, Will Smith having a good year, but JT Realmuto is having a JT Realmuto year kind of thing. So yeah, but nothing else. I kind of agree with a lot of it as well. I hate it for Pete because I feel like Pete, maybe if we would have gotten hurt the last or that week and a half or two. It hurt him a bit, but honestly, Matt Olson and Freddie Freeman both deserve it as well. So, yeah, the shortstop list is just weird because there's some big names and so much talent in Lindor. Obviously, Bogarts, Trey Turner, Dansby Swanson there that are on the list, but Orlando Arcia is having the better year, so he deserves to be in, and he is. The Braves went out to vote, and they got their guys.
They always
in too.
do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Moving over to the American League, we talked about this earlier. Adley Rutschman is leading the AL as catcher. Jonah Heim is second. Close is Salvi there as well. So it's going to be interesting to see. This might be Salvi's last chance at an All-Star game. So we'll see if he can get in as well. And
Get
I
that
think
push.
Yep, talking about a trend, we're going to see some Blue Jays here, right? Toronto is a very good voting city there. Vladdy leading the league in first base. Yandy Diaz is second. Second baseman, we got Marcus Semien, who we talked about him in a couple episodes back as maybe being an MVP front runner there. Kind of slowed down a little bit, but he's still very solid. With Merrifield second, Jose Altuve third. Moving over to third base, Matt Chapman and Josh Young. And I think that's very close, but Matt Chapman started off super hot. He won the Player of the Month, I think it was April. And then Josh Young just kept coming at it as well from a rookie. Very impressive. Rafael Devers is there third. He's kind of back, but I think he was among the league leaders in the RBIs as well, but he's just not having a Rafi season with the average wise either. Jose Ramirez is another big name there that we're kind of used to seeing, but Matt Chapman and Josh Young just deserve it as well. Shortstop, we got three shortstops that are very good, that are MVP candidates when it's all said and done. We got Bo Bichette, Corey Seager, and Wander Franco. So that top three, and it's in that order.
Clear top three.
Yeah, clear.
I would say, right?
Yeah, and it sucks with Wander Franco might be the odd man out, right? Or maybe they'll bring him in, and
he's kind of in that situation of Pete. That you're saying that one, you're not surprised, and who knows how he gets in, right? Maybe he gets brought in, but when you're looking at the votes, you do think, he deserves to get it.
Yeah, but who do you take out, right? Corey Seager missed some time, but he's also having an insane year. And I remember I posted on Twitter the other day how I did say Corey Seager was going to be the biggest beneficiary of the shift, and he is proving just that. Bo Bichette is having an insane year as well. Jeremy Pena there, fourth. Designated hitters, you got Shohei Ohtani. And I expect Shohei to do both things, probably pitch and hit, because why not? And then it doesn't matter who's second because it's by 1.5 million votes or something like that behind Brandon Belt. Outfield, we got Aaron Judge, Mike Trout, Randy Arozarena, and then Jordan Alvarez. We got George Springer, Kiermaier, and Adolis Garcia. Yoshida is there eighth as well. Yoshida can technically sneak in if Japan starts voting a little bit more, but he's having a very good year as well. But there's some big names. Are you going to
start that movement?
I'm going to start voting.
Start that movement?
Vote Joshi. But yeah, that kind of wraps it up. I think, we
got to see the pitchers as well. Obviously, we don't have them on here.
Yeah, and I think the pitchers are the ones that change the most as well. Yeah, they'll name the starters or, the whole pitching rotation and bullpen. But then, they pitch a couple of days before, so they won't be allowed. And you're going to have like a lot of moving parts there. But I'm kind of okay with this as well. There's nothing really that jumps out.
I have something that jumps out a little bit. So the best team in baseball, the Rays, they don't really have a ton of guys on this list. We did talk about Wander, but he's third right now. We have Randy. He's going to be there, but he's third leading vote getter as well. They don't have these top guys. Like, we're noticing a lot of these other teams that are really good. the Braves. We saw the Blue Jays well represented, Yankees. You see a lot of the names that are interchangeable there. The Rays are doing it in classic Rays fashion of just having a really, really good team, which is what we always think. And then you see these votes, and again, not knocking Wandy and Randy, but when you look at their record and what they've accomplished this year, you kind of expect some bigger names. And maybe that has to do, again, with the fan vote, right? That skews this a little bit. But for such a good team, they're not as represented as you would think, which is almost a compliment. They just have a good, solid team that goes out and wins every day.
They're they're well-rounded. They're a well-rounded team, and they don't have the biggest fan base. So that's where you see kind of like that dip. The same, you have usually is the Yankees, but they don't have much other than Judge right now. Rizzo is there, and he's having a horrible June, but Yandy Diaz is there. They do it a lot with pitching as well. They got a bunch of guys that throw from all different kinds of arm angles, and you got to expect some of those guys to be on the team as well. But no, like they do it. They don't. How do I say this? They're not just it's not just one player. Like we talked about the Yankees, and they go as Judge goes. The Rays goes out as they all go. They're all in this together, and they just keep moving that bus, and it's crazy how they do it.
Yeah, like you look at the Rangers. The Rangers have 4 or 5 guys in the top 3, which is kind of what you expect for a team doing something. The Rays, like you said, just complete team effort.
Yep. Another thing from the All-Star, obviously the All-Star game is going to be in Seattle. The only player that is confirmed is Julio Rodriguez. Obviously he participated in it. He put on a show last year in Dodger Stadium. I'm expecting some of these names to come out later this week.
That'll be this week, right?
Yeah. Anybody you expect? Is Pete Alonso gonna go? If he doesn't, he's gonna go, right? Like he lives for this.
He lives for it almost a little bit too much.
Oh my god!
I love Pete Alonso,
oh my god.
But like this is like his World Series. I need him to just relax, get healthy. I mean, he doesn't need to do it. I mean, he is fun to watch in the home run derby because he's like made for the home run derby. I don't think he goes this year. Do you think he does?
I don't know. I feel like that's what he's out of the playoff race. There's not much. Might as well go and try to make some money there as well. He's gonna put on a show. I think he likes the attention that he gets there because he knows that he's not gonna just no show on something like that. I'm just curious to see who else is gonna show up for this. We got Matt Olson, who's leading the league. He might be leading the league in home runs. He might be one. I don't think Shohei's gonna do it. Too much risk, honestly. Too much risk for him, especially being a free agent at the end of the year.
I would love to see it.
Same. But, Jorge Soler, Luis Robert, Kyle Schwarber, Aaron Judge, don't expect him. Mookie Beck, don't expect him. Max Muncy, Alcy Albies will be an interesting one. Devers, Trout, Garcia, Jordan. So I'm just reading names that are kind of like leading the league in home runs. And I just don't know who else. I could see Acuna doing it again. He's done it in the past. But there's always one of those guys kind of like at the bottom that say like, I'll do it. I don't know who would do it this year.
I could see like a Corbin Carroll doing it.
You think so?
They like to get, because I feel like they use it a little bit to promote some of the young guys. He's not, again, we said we were surprised with his home run numbers, but you don't necessarily think of him as a home run derby guy. But I could see him getting in there. I'd be interested to see it. But there's so many guys that have good home run derby swings, like even when Carl Schwarber wasn't, having the best year in the home run derby, he was electric. I just love the home run. Whoever they put out there.
Maybe I think a cool moment, and this just came to mind. Corey Seager is expected to probably make the team. He's gonna go to Seattle. His brother can pitch to him in BP. I think that would be a cool little moment. So that would be nice.
I like that. Yeah.
And he has the pop. We know he has the pop to do it.
Yeah. 100%.
Now, all-star players are the ones that are not struggling. So in the start, bench, and cut, we're going to be talking about the players that are struggling. The biggest disappointment so far of the MLB The Show, oh my God, I'm still in streaming mode. Of MLB. MLB.
Always grinding.
Always grinding. The MLB biggest disappointment. And we came up with 3 names. We thought about 5 of them, but it's start, bench, and cut. It's not start, bench, cut. So we got 3 names. It's going to be Carlos Correa, who signed a little bit of a big deal this offseason. It could have been bigger, but he signed a 6-year, $200 million contract with the Minnesota Twins. We're going to talk about Trey Turner, who signed a 11-year, $300 million deal with the Phillies. And last but not least, Francisco Lindor, 10 years, $341 million, 3 years ago, third season of this contract with the New York Mets. Now, explain to us how we're going to do this start bench cut, because we're doing it as to basically the worst. So the biggest disappointment is going to be the cut.
Yeah. So start bench cut, we're doing basically whoever you cut is the least disappointing, and whoever you start gets the award for most disappointing. So you do, if you're one of these players, you do not want us to start you.
I think I got
right?
it. I guess. Well,
You have to either have it or not have it. Yeah.
How about I start with who I think is the biggest disappointment?
Okay.
So does that mean I'm starting this guy?
Yes.
Okay, I'm starting Carlos Correa. Carlos Correa is my biggest disappointment. He is back. He was back in Minnesota. 220 average, 11 home runs. It's just 298 on base. He's 220 now because he's gotten hot in the last week or two, because he was below the Mendoza line all this time. Just I don't know. He missed a couple games with like some, I don't know if it was back or leg issues. Nothing major, which was kind of like the biggest I guess question mark of him coming into the season and the extension. But he's back in Minnesota. It's a place that he knows. You expected him to maybe feel more comfortable. They are in first place, but he's just not cutting it. 1.0 WAR season through 77 games or whatever is just not good enough. So biggest disappointment so far, I'm going Carlos Correa out of these three.
Interesting. Carlos Correa is my least disappointing player of this year. So I'm cutting him. And the reason I think that is, so during the offseason, all this stuff came out. So he's been injury prone in the past. We know that. All this stuff came out about his ankle, and teams offered him contracts, didn't get it. He ended up in Minnesota, where it was not his first or second choice. Because of that, I think everyone had a little bit of fear in their minds of what's going to happen with him. Is he going to have a bad year? You were almost kind of prepared for it in a way after what went on during the offseason. Along with that, the Twins are in first place. He can be incredibly disappointing, but the Twins are in first place. He has not taken his team out of contention. He's got paid the least amount out of these three guys. And so when I factor that all in, he's got injury issues that we knew about. He got paid less than everyone else, and his team is the only one that's in first place. For me, and I think those are all terrific points, I'm going to put him as the least disappointing of the bunch.
So you're not taking into consideration that he is in the weakest division?
No.
Oh, you just decided to ignore that part. Okay. He is in the weakest division, by the way.
I make the points that benefit me here.
Okay. Well, he's in the weakest division. That's the reason why Minnesota is also in first place.
They're in first place.
They are in first place. They are in first place. I'm looking at it more from an individual standpoint, though.
I understand.
And I think the fact that he's back in Minnesota, the same thing cannot be said for Trey Turner. It's his first year in Philly. Maybe let's give him some time to adjust. But I'm benching Francisco Lindor. I still think the biggest disappointment so far is Trey Turner. I'm going to tell you why, for a couple reasons. Yes,
you just said the biggest disappointment so far was Carlos Correa.
Well, no. Wait. I always get confused. Listen. I think biggest disappointment is Carlos Correa. The second biggest is Trey Turner. I think the fact that he is in Philly, like it's a new team. It's not the first time that he's on a new team, right? He went from Washington to the Dodgers, and he didn't take a step back at all, right? He actually played even better. There's a reason why he got all this money. 244 batting average, 7 home runs, 25 RBIs, 13 stolen. This is somebody that you signed for 11 years, $300 million, and he's hitting 244 for you with what's his on base? 298 on base for Trey Turner. This is your leadoff hitter. The fact that you have this contract, and I get it, maybe a slow start. He's trying to figure Philly out, but you signed him until he's 40, and that's a long contract.
And he's
Um,
built on speed too,
and he's
which
built
he's
on
not going
speed.
to have that when he gets older. You
Yeah.
need these years now.
So my thing is that he's never had a year like this. Like his worst year, if you look back, you had to go back to 2018 where he hit 271. He stole 43 bags, had 19 home runs, 73 RBIs. He's nowhere near that, and that was his worst year, and that was 5 years ago. So I guess the least disappointment is still Lindor for me. I don't think he's the reason why the Mets are struggling. It's probably more the bullpen. He has 1.0 WAR more than all the other two. He has a 2.1 WAR season so far. So he's doing things, and he's on pace for 30 home runs, 100 RBIs out of his shortstop. 220 average, yeah, it's not the best. Again, we're talking about 3 terrible starts from shortstops that are getting paid. And I know you hate your Mets right now, but I mean, he's still on pace for 30 and 100. And if you look at Trey Turner, he's on pace for like 14 and 50 RBIs. Like, come on.
So you're right, and you're actually 100% right, because Lindor was, just out of the anger in my heart, was going to be my most disappointing.
Did
I
I
was going to
convince you?
start him. I was thinking about it before, and then you put the nail in the coffin. Just based on the stats, because somehow he is on pace for 30 home runs
Somehow.
and 100 RBIs. Now, I will say it is the worst 30 home runs and 100 RBIs that I will ever see in my life if he does that, because he has been a disappointment. And you look, I know it is just this year, but he got that big contract with the Mets. Hasn't been an all-star once. With Cleveland, he was an all-star every year. He was in the MVP race every year. Last year, I think he was top 10 in the MVP, but he had a big second half and all that. It's a very disappointing, mediocre year for Lindor. Does that make sense? Like, he's having an average year, but it's very disappointing because he was brought on to be the best player on the Mets, and to be the best player on the Mets for a long time at a premier position, shortstop. It looked like a match made in heaven, and it just hasn't worked out. And you thought kind of last year maybe he figured it out, came out this year and showed that it's really not the case. So it's a very disappointing. I want to put him as my most disappointing, but realistically, I can't. Trey Turner is the most disappointing, I think, in all of baseball. Absolutely. And he is dragging the Phillies down with him because
They're
he was
trying.
a big signing.
They're trying. And
yeah. And he's like, no. Come back down to third place. And, when Bryce Harper was out for the beginning of this year, I remember thinking to myself, well, they got Trey Turner, who's going to, it's a different style game, but Trey Turner is going to pick up a lot of that slack. Trey Turner's played in that division. He's played, I know it was with the Nationals, but he plays in Phillies a lot. It felt like this is not a big transition for him. Played in big market teams his whole career, and he's never, ever had a start like this or a season like this. And you didn't see it coming. I don't think any of us saw it coming. To us, that was kind of like,
it was a great deal.
Surefire shortstop. Yes,
it was
the
great
most
deal.
surefire thing. You were like, the guy makes contact. He's fast. He hits for pop. He's a good defender. None of that stuff. None of it has come into play. And he's almost flown under the radar with how bad he's been. I mean, everyone just kind of says, yeah, Trey Turner's off to a bad start. Trey Turner's having an atrocious year, and it's absolutely killing the Phillies. And if it continues, it'll kind of sink their year.
And it kind of maybe it happens because when you look at people that look at average and they look at 240, it's not the worst. Correa was hitting 200 all year and everything, but like OPS plus of 85, like that is not very good, and he's never been below 100. When we look at OPS plus for Correa is 97. That's 12 points higher.
Right.
There's a little bit of a gap there.
And he's bad.
And he's
bad.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, again, it's very tough because they're all for sure underperforming their contract, no matter what they do outside of the field. But it's bad. And we need this for baseball. We need them to be good. The Phillies, if the Phillies want to make a run at the wild card, they're going to need Turner. If the Twins want to win that division, they're going to need Correa there as well. And the Mets are going to need Lindor just because
the Mets are done. To get back to 500.
They're going to need Lindor anyway. So, yeah, that's good for start bench cut. Interesting one. A little bit of a
We went at it kind of a different way, which was interesting.
looking from a kind of like a bad angle, or not bad, but negative angle.
No,
of
but even
things,
like how you and me went about
Yeah.
it. Like I gave Correa a little credit just because his team has somehow survived without him, which maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. But yeah, it was interesting.
yeah, but that's the thing with, and this happens a lot of the times with the GOAT conversations, right? Who's the GOAT? Who's the GOAT? It depends on how you look at it as well, right? Like there's
Yeah.
no right or wrong necessarily decision. And every time we do start bench cut, it's always gonna be, super.
Yeah, you're entitled to your wrong opinion.
Exactly. You are too. But that will do it for episode 22. And that is not an opinion, that is a fact. Thank you so much for listening. If you watch it on YouTube, like and subscribe and everything. Anything you want to add? Next week or next episode, we will definitely have all the information for the All-Star voting starters and everything. We may even do one Thursday or Friday after the announcement. Who knows?
I think we will. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, me too.
I am. Because I don't know, every year I feel like they announce that stuff later and later, which I know they don't. It's the same, but you're like, it's coming up pretty soon. So yeah, I want to see it. I'm excited. I mean, I have no team to root for now. I'm just a baseball fan. So this is a big highlight of my year.
Are you going to change your backdrop of Citi Field, or is not Citi Field's problem, right?
No,
I'm
not angry. I don't know if you understand. I'm not angry at the stadium. It's the team. Yeah.
They played there. But anyways, we'll start it with a little bit of he called it a shot at him, and we'll end it with a shot at the entire Mets franchise. Again, thank you so much for listening, watching, enjoying it, and all that good stuff. We'll see you on the next one.
Adios.